Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We got a really good sales hacker webinar for you. We got a fantastic panel of folks for you today talking about killer tactics for ramping up and coaching sales reps. So I'm going to introduce everyone kind of all at once. We got Jordan Christopher here, VP of Sales from Sisense, Natalie Lebow, Sales Productivity Manager from Greenhouse, Emmanuelle Skala, VP of Sales from DigitalOcean, Brendon Cassidy, VP of Sales at Gong, and Amit Bendov, CEO of Gong. And Amit, you're gonna lead us off today here. So we've got a couple really good questions teed up. If you have questions as the audience, feel free to write them in the Q&A area on the webinar control panel, and tweet us using the hashtag #SHWebinar. So Amit, why don't you get us started here?
All right, excellent. Thanks, Max. Excited to be here. So we're going to start left to right, and we're going to go over, certain themes. One of the key problems really, once you get to a certain scale, how to make sure that your people succeed. And I think we're fortunate to have some of the best minds in the industry with lots of experience. Really looking forward. We're going to start left to right. I know. So Jordan, you're first. Tell us. So there are several schools of thoughts. Some companies start with hiring mature AEs and then have SDRs, and some start with hiring SDRs and then as they mature, they move to an AE, commercial, enterprise, and so on. What do you guys do at Sisense?
So we have a hybrid model. We have about 50 reps right now, globally split between our Tel Aviv office and our New York office. We have an office in Arizona as well. So we have about 50 AEs. We have about 40 SDRs across those locations as well. It's all inbound lead gen. We started our sales infrastructure. We opened our sales infrastructure in the U.S. about 3 years ago. Started all with account executives that we hired net new. Since then, we've incorporated an SDR to AE promotion program, which has been incredibly valuable. So when SDRs have been here and have been successful for about a year to 18 months, we promote them into the account executive role. That has been an absolute incredible success for us. So we have both, but a very, very active program to promote.
Interesting. So what are the pros and cons? And I guess people want to know of, going the SDR first track versus hiring mature AEs in your experience.
When you give someone a chance to come in and learn the basics of the organization, to learn our space, learn our competitive differentiators, to learn the culture of Sisense as an SDR, you're removing so much risk from wondering out of the gates whether or not an employee or salesperson is going to click. So again, it's just without exception, all of our SDRs, when promoted to AEs, have gotten to deals faster than AEs off the street, and in terms of consistency, different focus, a little bit more on sales acumen and sales skills with those guys versus AEs off the street, if you will. You have to first train them about Sisense, who we are, the BI marketplace, if they haven't been in BI, etc. So it's just a huge reduction of risk in terms of success with that model.
Absolutely, thanks. Natalie, what's your path at Greenhouse? Do you have a mixed model or SDR first, or how do you ensure that people succeed over time?
Well, it used to be a mixed model. We used to have, while we were building out the company, we brought in a lot of experienced account executives, and then we promoted some of our SDRs to become account executives. We've moved to a model where we don't, I haven't, at least in the months that I've been here, seen anyone coming from the outside who promote our SDRs to the AE world, which is comprised of small, medium to enterprise buckets, starting with support. So again, and to just echo what Jordan was saying, that does give us a chance to get the reps acclimated with the system, but also with like a lot of the integrations that we have and the real ecosystem of how we sell and who we sell to and what else is in the market.
Excellent. And you've mentioned, you told me before about your triple MAVE model, how you drill, repeat, and can you walk us through it like in 60 seconds or so?
Sure. So what Amit is referring to is drill, repeat, shadow, which is a method we use here at Greenhouse for onboarding and for onboarding for either SDRs or AEs. So drill is the class. It's drilling that information in. Repeating is the exercise, allowing that sales rep to exercise what they just learned in a few different ways, whether that's group exercises with their mentor, whether that's stuff they do on their own, and then shadow, which is very much letting them run with it and shadowing them, whether it's a manager or a mentor, and figuring out what more we need to focus on now that they've been in the field. The trick, though, with drill, repeat, shadow is you got to do it at least twice, right? So after they've been in the field and you've shadowed, you re-drill, re-repeat, and re-shadow, just to make sure that that information does resonate and it turns into action items.
Excellent. Thanks, Natalie. So, Brendon, now to you. You've probably, between all of us, I'm venturing to say you've worked, in part or full with more companies than any of us, from desktop and TalkDesk and Echosign and Adobe and I'm not going to list them all. And people want to know.
No, you can list them all. I mean, just kidding.
All right, go ahead. And people want to know either CEOs or VP of sales, especially if they're with a new company, and I know it varies, so how quickly should I expect a rep to close their first deal? And let's say we're not talking about, multi-million enterprise deals, the regular kind of deals that most of the people here work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly shades of gray there, right? It's not just a more transactional sales cycle versus an enterprise sales cycle. There's a big difference between is your average deal size 20K or 100K or 250K. But I think generally about the length of sort of your average sales cycle, I think is whatever the length of your average sales cycle is a pretty good litmus test for when you can expect their first deal to come in. And obviously, if they're walking in and they're not inheriting any type of existing pipeline and they're not going to be fed either your sort of outbound leads through the SDR or inbound, then there's going to be some delay there as far as when that clock starts. But I think generally speaking, about the length of your average sales cycle, I think a lot of people push it off too much, right? Push that expectation off. I've seen some companies even with somewhat lower sort of average deal size sort of push that ramp out like 6 months. And in the start, that just creates, in my opinion, not a great expectation from the get-go. Basically for me, about 3 months, right? Unless it's an exorbitantly high average deal size, 3 months is about right. Sort of at the end of their first quarter, or maybe the last month of their first full quarter, you want them hitting some sort of number.
All right, so if I hear you right, whatever your average sales cycle is, this is where you should start at least seeing the light, but if it's not exactly there, be a little more, give them a little more leeway.
Yeah, but I do, again, I do, you do want to set, a pretty quick path to some sort of number. Even set a goal, even if it's not much for like their first full month. And again, it depends on the average deal size. If it's 100K, that's not reasonable. If it's 15 or 20K, it is reasonable. So, I'd say that's about right.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Now, Emmanuelle, either at DigitalOcean or other companies that you worked at, you have a dedicated person whose sole purpose in life is to raise the bar for existing rep, coach the existing rep, and onboard people? And if so, at what scale does it make sense?
So I don't right now at DigitalOcean. It's a little bit of a different animal in that the company has been historically 100% self-service, and I'm building a sales team on top of that for the first time, and I'm about 5 months in. So I'm going to use, for this particular question, I'll kind of leverage other experience. I do think it's a good idea. You have to obviously do it at a certain scale. I think the right scale is when your sales managers, people who are actually have the reps directly reporting to them, and maybe that's you for a period of time, have about Yeah, 5 to 8 reps where your time then really starts to become, the sales manager's time really starts to get too focused and too much time on deals and pipeline management and opportunity management, and then that's when the kind of the coaching and the training and the development starts to go by the wayside. If you're managing 4 or 5 reps, it's still pretty good. Once you get closer to 8, it starts looking really, really, really hard to do that. I also think another time to consider it is when you have more than one type of sales team. So if you have like a BDR team and an AE team, or if you have a mid-market AE team and an enterprise AE team, the reason why is because then you have 2 sales managers essentially, right? And they may have different philosophies and different approaches. And while that's good, while you want to get the best of everybody's experience, when you scale, if the way that your SDR leader is teaching your SDRs is fundamentally different than the way that your AE leader or your rep leader is teaching them, you're going to have conflict, right? So having one person kind of bridge those and provide resources to both of those individuals or multiple individuals, I think makes a lot of sense. I'm a big believer in doing it early. I think the earlier you can afford it, if you can afford it earlier, do it. Why not? Right? The earlier you can afford it, I think this person can add a ton of difference. I've typically called it a sales enablement person. When I was at Influitive, I had a director who had sales enablement and sales operations, and then he had 2 individuals reporting to him. One was more focused on the day-to-day of the sales operations, and one was like an enablement specialist who was focused on the day-to-day of the onboarding and training, et cetera. I think it's, we obviously have to have a good amount of hiring if you need somebody who's focused on onboarding, and you probably have to be ready to want to codify some of that, maybe even have a system to manage your courses, maybe even have a certification program. You're at the point where you want to do training on a regular basis, and you don't want it just to be the ad hoc, hey, let's grab some pizza and do some training. At that point, you want to do it earlier. At VM Turbo, we did it very, very early on as well, because we had a lot of young people in their sales careers, and we wanted to train them from day one with like a week-long boot camp that I did and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm a big believer in having a dedicated person. Sooner the better, but at a minimum, once your managers get to the point where they can't possibly put a system together.
Right. Excellent. Thanks, Emmanuelle. Max, maybe one question from the audience, if we have any, that is based on.
Yeah. We have a couple questions here. So we spoke a little bit about promoting SDRs to AEs, and somebody wrote about doesn't encouraging SDRs to become AEs kind of shoot yourself in the foot, having to constantly replenish your SDR team? What do you think about that? I think, Jordan, you were the one who was talking about this promotion.
It's a great question, and it's definitely a challenge that we need to balance. So we still hire the vast majority of our AEs as net new external hires, and set up a schedule so the SDR team can plan. SDRs are part of the marketing group here at Sisense. So we've set up a schedule that looks a year ahead and plans for how many SDRs per quarter we will migrate into the sales team. So they're hiring ahead of that and planning for that. The SDRs know when they're next in line for the promotion. It's a very, very well organized and orchestrated plan, but we are still doing the vast majority of our hiring outside of that. I would take them all if I could, but you're right. They do a very, very important job as SDRs, and the marketing team does a great job training them and ramping them up. I think at about a year, they're ready to move in terms of their skills and their interest in moving to sales. We've put the program in place to set expectations closer to 18 months so that the marketing team is getting a bit more of a return on all of that training.
I'll add in there, I don't think you're shooting yourself in the foot at all. I think actually quite the opposite. If you think about the fact that if you hire an AE from the outside, you're going to have a ramp period of where they're going to learn. Hopefully, if you're doing it right, like the way Jordan's doing it, with really kind of methodically planning it out, and you have training and things, hopefully that ramp is reduced by at least half, right? And so you do the math, and the ramp for an SDR is significantly shorter than it is for an AE. So you actually do the math on your productivity, like you literally put it in a spreadsheet, and you're doing the opposite of shooting yourself in the foot. So if you run two models and you have one where you're hiring from the outside and you have one where you're hiring from the inside, it actually mathematically comes out better.
Somebody's got a ramp. Somebody's got a ramp, right?
Yeah,
So it might as well be the SDR instead of the AE that's coming in from the externally.
Well, yeah, and also the AE ramp is generally longer because they're doing full sales cycle.
Yep. We've got a lot of questions pouring in now. Do you want to keep going with some of the questions that we have?
Let's cover. Yeah, we'll maybe after every cycle, and if we have some time towards the end. Good to hear that there is lots of questions. Natalie, you've done some wonders at the Greenhouse with the programs that you've built. Can you tell us what do you have in place? What kind of programs for kind of like raising the bar of the existing reps, not necessarily the new reps, but just keep training programs and improvement programs in place?
Sure. So just, you cut out a little bit. I just wanted to make sure I heard you right. What do we have in place for current AEs and to make sure that they're continuing to train? Okay. So really a lot of that is not just, so there's two main things that we'll do, peer exercises, and then I call it kind of going back to the basics. The peer exercises are encouraging each other to, one, role play. I think that's something that goes, it's pretty underrated. A lot of people don't like to role play. It's uncomfortable, it's weird, it's cheesy, but it's very important. And once we can get into the mindset of let's continue and improve, role playing can help, it makes a world of a difference. So we will actually pair our more senior AEs with not only other senior AEs, but maybe newer AEs, put an hour on the calendar once every 2 weeks and just role play with scenarios that we've already created. It's fun, it's team bonding, and they're also learning. The second thing I would do is going back to the basics is really where I have, I run the training and the implementation and the training and onboarding at our company, and I bring in a lot of our AEs to help give sessions, and they get asked really hard questions by some new hires, and sometimes they forget how to answer them. And then we have other people like me who are in the session, and we can help facilitate more of a learning than just a teaching. I have had so many senior AEs come up to me and say, being part of that onboarding program has helped me refine my skills. I always say this, sales is a muscle. You need to continue to grow it. You need to exercise. And encouraging them to do things with others and teaching other people will help. It can be very hard because in our experience, at every company, senior AEs feel like they know the most and no one can teach them, but they can learn a lot from each other, more so than from their managers. So I encourage a lot of collaborative exercises to help with current AEs that are already doing really well.
Excellent. Thanks, Natalie. This sounds great. Brendon, now to you. I mean, you wrote a lot and spoke about osmosis and learning within the team. Along the line with Natalie. So, what are the tools and processes that you like to use? Brendon, you might be on mute.
Yeah, I think historically, from a coaching standpoint, there haven't been a lot of legitimate usable tools that you really can use for coaching historically. I mean, so definitely with the advent of Gong and Saleshood and some other stuff, it's really actually a pretty nascent space, right? It's early. But for me, if it's a larger sort of unflattened sales organization and I have sort of managers or directors reporting to me, I really, insist that my managers or directors are very connected to the calls themselves. I don't really want a manager who says, I don't have enough time in the day to listen to my reps' sales calls. Because, again, unless you're sort of connected to their calls and understand what's happening specifically in each deal, it's very difficult to coach. And so you end up with sort of a manager or director who's really just sort of passing you the same information that you could get directly from the sales rep themselves. But I think with sort of the advent of sort of call recording and sort of call analytics and analysis, it allows you to really take all of that sort of unstructured data and all these calls that happen every day and really break them down where you don't literally have to be listening to that call in real time. to be able to provide feedback and coaching, and that's certainly a game changer for me. So yeah, I think that's really the difference, right? A raw call recording really only allows you to use it as a coaching event for a team, I think, because there's just not enough hours in the day to sit there and listen to raw call recordings and coach your reps one-on-one in that type of setting. But when you can break it down with transcription and analytics, it allows you to, sort of use your time wisely and coach your reps up when you have time to listen. So I think that's a game changer. Historically, though, very difficult to coach unless you were literally listening to those calls in real time, which doesn't scale beyond, a pretty small sales organization.
Okay, thanks, Brendon. What about AEs learning from each other, along the lines of what Natalie discussed, or one shape, or maybe some other forms?
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer, obviously, in sort of osmosis. Actually had an idea before going around a startup called Osmosis, which was somewhat similar. But yeah, I think that I always try to pair somewhat like similar personality salespeople, a newer rep with a more experienced rep, because obviously there's a tremendous amount that you can learn by listening to their calls. That they have just a dramatically different personality than you, and personality plays a big part in one rep's ability to sell or close or be successful. Then it's a little bit of a leap. And so I always try to pair somewhat similar personalities or somewhat similar selling styles with, as far as my newer ramping reps or struggling reps, with more experienced reps.
Excellent, thanks. Natalie, can you elaborate a little more about your, rep shadowing and, how does it work at Greenhouse?
Sure. So we use Gong in the fullest extent. We have, I guess the biggest thing I can speak around is we will have reps listen to those Gong calls and give feedback, and it's always structured feedback because the sales managers and I have come together to create a guideline of things that they should be looking for. We do realize that no one is the best at sales, right? So the purpose of the guidelines are questions that help them think about what they should be looking for in these calls for their peers, for their friends, which also indirectly helps them. It's like, oh, I say that kind of stuff too, and now that I'm hearing someone else say it, sounds totally wrong. I should really fix that. So, like I said, I think listening to each other's Gong calls with clear direction is very important. Otherwise, it's kind of like, hey, yeah, I listened to your call, it was really good, or here's a few things you could change. Creating that structure behind what you should be looking for is important.
Excellent, thank you. Emmanuelle, how do you identify as a whole, if you look at a team, how do you identify areas that people could use some coaching, where you have some holes or needs?
So I do it quantitatively and qualitatively. So, and I also do it based on the individual, and then holistically based on the team. And so, like, talking about the qualitative, I mean, we talked a lot about this already. Qualitatively, you have to do it by being on calls. From your managers and your directors being on calls, to recording calls, to using technologies like Gong, right? And that's the only way you're going to be able to get the qualitative understanding of where the coaching is. And you can also do things like looking at emails, right? And deal reviews, all the kind of normal hygiene things that we've been talking about. Role plays give you qualitative, understanding of where reps are. So from a qualitative standpoint, you have to be present. You have to be, involved with the deals and with your reps in a variety of different ways. And you can, discern patterns from that. So you can look and say, okay, it looks like, half my reps are struggling with this part of the sales cycle, or that part of the sales cycle, or this particular, or handling objections, or doing negotiations, or whatever it is. And then, so that you can put something in place for the entire team. The way I do that, though, it ends up being a little bit more quantitative. So, a plug for another company that I like is Insight Squared, and I use them the report that I use the most is the funnel report, and that actually helps me both at my whole team level, but also drill down to the individual, look at where in the funnel are the conversion rates, and comparing one rep to another rep, and looking at at the holistic conversion rates of our funnel, and that gives me a good indication of where the training opportunities are, right? And so if I'm seeing bottlenecks at the top of the funnel, then I know I need to work with them on better qualification potentially, right? Or developing urgency or something along that lines. If I see bottlenecks at the bottom of the funnel, and I know I need to work with them on negotiation or getting more stakeholders involved or whatever. So you can look at win-loss rates. Different types of opportunities and different stages in the funnel. And that, both at an individual level and at a team level, that gives me the ammunition to know where I should focus my kind of training and coaching efforts, especially if I'm going to hire a third-party trainer, which they can be, tend to be pretty expensive. I want to make sure that I'm not hiring a third-party trainer to do prospecting when everyone's challenge is really, around value creation. So I want to make sure I'm using my resources in the right way.
Right. Excellent points. Max, do you want to maybe bring another question or two from the audience?
Yeah, we got a lot of questions here. So, where do we start? Session topics. It's probably better to just keep going and take these at the end. We've got a lot, and they're all kind of around the same area.
All right.
So let's just come back to them later on.
Okay.
Save us, maybe cut the questions that we're asking right now at like 1:45, and we can do 10, 15 minutes of questions.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. So, Jordan, can you tell us, do your managers listen to call? How often is it done? Is it mostly live recording? I know there's some what's your approach to that?
Yeah, so our teams are set up with a sales director managing a team of 7 or 8 reps. So we have about 6 of those. We have 7 of those teams. Listening to calls is probably the most valuable form of training and coaching that we do. And it's incredibly time consuming. So if you're going to do it, it has to be high value. We use Gong ourselves. We use it religiously. I encourage the sales directors to listen to a call per rep per week at least. The Sisense is it's an easy to use analytics tool, but it's a complex sale because it's a platform that can be used across any line of business, across any industry, across many different use cases. So it's a complex sale in that I can't train reps, give them a script, give them a value proposition, and they go message it to a specific buyer persona. It's the same for everyone. Every one of our sales cycles is a living and breathing organism. So listening to when you pair the complexity of that with the complexity of so many different levels of sales professionals and personalities, listening to individual phone calls and coaching those reps on their specific styles and their specific techniques is really, really important. We use Sisense to try to identify where in the sales cycle there are challenges, if it's win rates, if it's stage duration at specific stages, and then we'll in Gong we'll be able to go to the areas of those phone calls that are discussing those specific topics. For instance, if it's a tech evaluation call, or if we see reps are losing their deals in the negotiation stage, we can quickly scan to pricing discussions within these calls and coach the reps for that. So it's a very, very big part of our organization. We do more general training as well. We do bi-weekly training religiously, globally, and that's more generic. It's got to resonate with the entire team. But when you listen to individual phone calls and you can coach a rep on his specific or her specific techniques, it's very, very valuable.
Excellent. Thank you. Brendon, you mentioned cold breakdown. So can you share, how do you do that? I mean, what's your advice, and what are the best practices? Do you do it one-on-one? Do you do team breakdowns? What's your secret sauce?
Yeah, I mean, that somewhat depends on the size of the team, certainly. But I think, every day, breaking calls down every day. In an earlier stage scenario, meeting with the reps one-on-one every day. in call breakdowns and listening to call recordings and breakdowns is going to be a core component of that, not just breaking down their calls, but sort of contrasting areas they're struggling with specific calls of other reps that do it right. So I think it has to be in your DNA every day. And, I think, when I'm managing the reps directly, I'm always trying to have one-on-one with them every day, maybe multiple times a day. Because there's really not that much else to do at that stage, right, except, either break, sort of get better at the craft of the new deals coming into the pipeline, or to, talk about the existing deals in the pipeline. So it's an everyday, multiple times a day process for me. Obviously, the bigger you get, you're not going to be able to break down every single call. But in the earlier stages, it's hugely important.
Excellent. Thanks, Brendon. Yeah. Emmanuelle, so here's a question to you. Every VP sales is busy. There's just enough. One of the questions that we're getting a lot. I don't really have time or listen to calls. So if you only have and that's the reality, right? So if you only have 3-4 minutes, what are the things that you're looking for? If at a minimum to get a good feel for whether a call goes south or north.
So if I'm just listening to a call and I'm not using something like a gong, then I'm going to look for two things. If I only have a couple minutes, I'm going to bookend it, right? And I'm going to look at the beginning and what kind of questions did they ask, because that's probably we all know, right? The most critical part of any kind of sales call is the type of questions that the sales rep is asking, and how many, and the type of questions that they're asking. And then the end is the close, right? Like what were the call to action? What was the next step? Did they really clearly identify, or was it like, great, look forward to hearing from you, bye-bye. Those, if I don't have technology to use and I'm literally just doing a recording, then I'm going to bookend it. If I have technology to use, and in addition to that, I'm going to look at the frequency of the number of minutes that the rep spoke versus the prospect. In general, I've seen in my past is that there's a strong correlation between the less the rep is speaking to close rate. Right? The more you get the customer to talk, the more you actually get the customer to to talk about their challenges and their problems and what they're trying to do, the more likely you are to be able to close a deal. If it's 80% pitching, there's a good chance that they weren't listening to the majority of it anyway. So that's, if I only have a few minutes, those are the things I'm looking for.
Excellent. Thank you. Max, do you want to bring us some questions?
Yes. So rattle off some SDR promo passing ones here, and some transitional stuff. So the jump from SDR to AE is a big one. If you don't have an inside sales position, how do you successfully set up the transition from SDR to AE? And it's kind of a two-parter. Secondly, besides AE, what other career paths are logical in your organization for an SDR to go into?
Who wants to jump in?
I can jump in and take that. What was the first part of the question again?
So the jump from SDR to AE is a big one. So how do you successfully set up that transition?
So, like I said, we have an 18-month window where at a year we start talking to that rep about what that plan will be, and we start focusing on the on product knowledge and sales skills. So the ability to, with Sisense, we don't use sales engineers to demo the products. The account executives do that themselves. So the SDRs have to become proficient on product usage and demoing, so we focus heavily on that. And the other piece, like I said, is the sales training and sales skills. So they go into a boot camp that's formalized over 2 weeks. But it's also, the SDRs, while they've been here, they've built great relationships, obviously, with the other account executives. And there's a lot of peer help on that. And there's a lot of testing that we do before an SDR that's promoted to an AE actually goes into the sprinkler to start to get leads. Hopefully that's helpful. And there was a second part to that?
Yeah, and what other areas within an organization would you see SDRs going into kind of logically? Where would you funnel SDRs if you don't think there should be an SDR, AE next?
That's a great question. The only, I believe the only other place we have moved SDRs to outside of account executive positions is our customer success team. So more on the account management side. We've moved a couple SDRs there as well.
And
also been successful.
And
I've
lastly,
moved
on the
SDRs to marketing too is another place. Yeah,
to
marketing.
customer success.
Well, customer success for sure. Marketing is another place. Sales ops or sales enablement is another place.
Yep.
Well,
I have
one to become team leads at the sales development, right? I mean, that there is a management and leadership track.
Hey, I have one ad there, Max, on that question, or as far as like what's the timeline or what's the path there. I don't try to make it necessarily strictly time-based, but more performance-based. So if you come in and you absolutely crush it from day one, then you can write your ticket into a sales role faster. Maybe not as fast as you want, but certainly a lot faster than somebody that comes in and is mediocre or underperforming. So I always try to make it where, hey, you want to write your ticket or write your path up here, go crush it, and that accelerates everything. So that's sort of the culture that I would try to set.
And we have a question asking, so in the 12 to 18 month period, how much of the time is inbound focused? How much of the time is prospecting in your organization?
Sisense is pure inbound. We're just starting to experiment with outbound. It's all inbound lead gen.
If you don't have any inbound leads, I think that answers that question. So if you don't have any marketing-driven leads, then you're going to be spending your time 100% outbound. If you'd love it to be 50-50, but I can tell you the vast majority of startups out there, and I've advised, a lot of them, have a huge shortage of sort of inbound or marketing-driven leads. So the focus has been, for a lot of startups, heavy outbound over the last 2 years, I'd say.
I mean, it comes down to, again, I bring it back to the math, but it comes down to the math. Right? If you can look at the inbound lead flow and look at your conversion rates, and you're going to come up, 50% shy of your number, then you have to make up the other 50% with outbound.
Yep.
Yeah, every VP of sales, if you don't have to do any outbound prospecting, and you can still hit your number, they would be, more than happy to take that scenario. So.
Yeah, definitely. And staying on that, the hiring and the onboarding process for SDRs, what are the biggest qualities, I guess, you're looking for in a candidate?
Natalie, you want to take that?
Sure. What are the biggest qualities that we look for when hiring SDRs?
Yeah.
I've always looked for things that I can't teach. I've looked for hunger, passion, smarts, resilience, and people who just want to figure things out. If they have those qualities, I can teach them anything. And I think that's really the most important, especially when we're looking at green hires. What do they do in college that set them apart from others? We hire a lot of people who have started their own businesses and held different positions in student governments or their Greek organizations, and wanting and being proactive. The last thing I would ever want is for someone to be on the, if we're talking about performance quadrants, are the people who don't want to work hard. Because I can teach you sales all day long, but if you're not going to want to work hard or work smart, then it just won't work out.
Yeah, I think I always want to hire somebody that I project as an account executive, right? Or maybe even more than that. You don't want to just hire somebody that projects as an SDR. So I think the things I look for are they curious, and are they curious about technology on some level? I think that's important. I think you want somebody that likes to argue. That's a pretty good quality. So maybe somebody that's done debate in high school or college or whatever it is, and then somebody that's competitive. Because, again, you're going to be starting with nothing, and you're going to have to pull yourself up and make yourself. And, that takes a pretty competitive personality most of the time, because that's one of the things that's going to drive you is starting from the bottom and seeing a big fat zero in front of you. That's a pretty big motivator to do whatever you have to do to, pull yourself up.
Any, yeah, go for it, Jordan.
Yeah, I was just going to say a proven track record of success. I know that sounds obvious, but we've actually used our SDR program as a means of bringing people into Sisense, into the business intelligence industry from a completely different world. We have a former professional football player, NFL football player. He played in the NFL for a short period of time and joined as an SDR to learn technology, to learn business intelligence. And now he's a thriving account executive. We've taken people that came from the recruiting space. But when we take someone from outside of an industry and they're looking for an opportunity to break in technology, we want to see a proven track record of success, and we want to really see a self-starter, somebody that's really used to a high level of activity without a lot of coaching, and they've been successful trying and doing different things.
So what is
Go for it. I was going to say ex-NFL player is always a good bet. So, Natalie, go ahead, sir.
All right. I was going to say, I think the hard part for me is trying to figure out who that is. Trying to figure out if that person is who I want them to be in an interview. And it's really hard. So I still by no means have mastered it. And I think that's where, hire slow, fire fast comes in. Obviously, it's not first choice to fire fast, but it's, being able to figure that out in the interview process is pretty tough.
Right.
Yeah, that's sorry, go ahead.
Small thing to everything that was said. I think coachability, drive, energy, smarts. There's one thing that's important, especially for SDRs that are more phone bound than email. Just good voice and energy just interview over the phone. It's most people are reasonable, but that's something just connects very, very quickly. It's an important trait, and if you don't have that, your life's going to be more difficult as an SDR.
So we know what traits you want. How are you in the interview process? What kind of questions are you asking, or how are you asking them to find out, if people have these traits? Because you can't just say like, hey, are you competitive? So what are you doing to pull this out of them? Is there anything that we can give the audience they can almost steal and plug into their interview process? Any interesting or unique kind of questions or tactics that you use? Emmanuelle, you look like you got.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if it's unique necessarily. I ask about something that you're passionate about, and it could be anything, right? Talk to me if they say, well, I'm really passionate about sports, and I'm like, okay, well then tell me about them, and then if they're rattling off stats, and you can tell they're following, their favorite sport, and it just tells me that they're not an observer on something, right? That they're in some kind of they're in the games in some way, right? Obviously, I'd love them to be passionate about technology, but sometimes when you're hiring really young people, that's just not the case. But if they're passionate about something, it tells me that they have the ability to. The other thing I do is I put a lot of time on the interviews for questions that they ask me. I'm pretty diligent about kind of halfway up, okay, time to reverse the table, you ask me questions. And usually it's after the first question that they ask me that I've decided yes or no. Because it's based on the quality of the question. It's based on how much, because you can tell how much homework they did. You can tell how curious they are by the kinds of questions they ask you. If the first question they ask me is about, hey, I heard you guys have free lunch every day. Then it just doesn't give me the indication that they're really going to, that they're here for the right reasons. And so those are the two things that I do pretty consistently for every.
What's your vacation policy?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Every startup at this point has unlimited vacation and free lunch every day. It's perfect.
Not what you should be asking in an interview for sure.
Yeah,
I
think
one of the questions I love is to describe a personal challenge that you've had to overcome, and a lot of times they actually start talking about a deal or a deal strategy, and I ask them, no, within reason, as long as you're comfortable sharing it. I really want to understand something personal that you needed to overcome, and that's pretty telling of someone's perseverance, and I like that question a lot. And trying to think what else in the interview process. I love asking, what did you do to prepare for this interview? You know, I want to understand how much homework, how seriously they're taking this, and then if they've told me that they've read a number of things or watched a number of things, I can ask them specific questions around that content to test if they really have that curiosity, the questioning that Emmanuelle mentioned is super, super important, because that's all about sales discovery, right? You've got to have a desire to understand who's on the other side of the phone and what pain they have and what challenges you can help them with, and that all comes through questioning. Having a natural level of curiosity is really, really important, so I want to leave plenty of time for them to ask questions.
I think Max. Sorry. I think that anybody that can nail this with technology is going to make a lot of money, right? As far as, you know, how to sort of accurately draw out, does this person really have the DNA or blueprint to be successful here? I think one of the things I do is sort of what Emmanuelle talked about, which is have them pick a subject that they're interested in. By the way, did the computer just freeze real quick?
Yeah, it looks like it did. We're hearing you, but...
Oh, sorry. I was typing in Myers. I was seeing if there was a Myers-Briggs for sales, if anybody created that, like a personality test for salespeople or something like that. That would be I don't know, that would be interesting. I don't know if it's a business or a startup, but, you know, there's definitely a list of questions or something that you can put together that how you ask those questions will determine whether or not this person really is competitive or whether this person really is resilient and things like that. You know, like, what's the last thing you remember selling? You know, when's the last time you were competitive? And, like, see what they say. Oh, yeah, back in high school I played tennis or something like that. Or is it, you know, I was online for groceries yesterday and I can get on this line or this line, and I got on this line and I stared at the other line because I knew I got on the wrong line. Like, I want to hear that person say that, not like, oh, I played tennis in high school. Like, I want them to talk about, yeah, I was staring at the car that went in the other toll, you know, lane yesterday because I got in the wrong lane and it pissed me off. So I wonder if there is, I was Googling to see if there was like a Myers-Briggs or something like that for sales. Because it's interesting if you can kind of create something like that that works.
One thing that I think really helps, and this is a little bit old school, but just piggybacking off of what Jordan said, top grading, I don't know if anyone uses top grading for interviewing, but they have a lot of questions around, talk to me about a time where you've had to overcome something, and that way you can really test if they've overcome adversity in their lives and really get down to personal things as well, because it's not just about professional obstacles that they've overcome, but usually candidates will be much stronger if they've come over some personal hardships and hurdles. And Top Grading is a really good book that can help you, you know, get those questions out.
Okay, maybe one more question, Max. I think we could probably squeeze one more in if there is a good one.
Lost your audio.
Sorry. Somebody asked a question about talking a lot about phone skills on the webinar. Real quickly, how do you coach people on how to just speak and write more effectively for sales? What is like the first thing you can do when getting, you know, somebody who's in, maybe an SDR comes in and they're pretty raw, but they have the right traits? How do you get them to understand how to speak and write in maybe a more structured manner, or speak and write for sales, and understand, you know, not just the phone pitch, but also the email pitch, and how to kind of carry a conversation when they've never done this before, but they have the right building blocks? You want to start with Jordan, and then we can go down.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of where call recording comes in. If they can hear themselves and hear their peers speaking, if they're speaking too quickly, you know, some reps, you hear them on the phone and they're not finishing their thoughts, not finishing their sentences. So phone skills, I just think it's critical for them to hear themselves, and you know, Gong's obviously a big part of our success with that.
Natalie, do you want to go?
Natalie?
Sorry, I didn't know what the order was. So, you know, that's a hard one. I think that even bigger than that is being able to test for writing skills before someone comes onto your team. So part of the process, having some sort of email challenge would be good. Something I've done with our SDRs as they onboard our I call it an email challenge with their peers. We will create we'll actually use a real profile, give it to the ramped SDR, and have the new hire email their mentor, the ramped SDR, as if they were that profile. We'll have the mentor push back a couple times, and I'll actually be able to see an entire thread of an email exchange, and then we'll do is copy and paste that entire thread into a Google Doc, comment, and make corrections. It's not as scalable as we would like, but again, ideally you'd like to test those things before you actually bring them on board.
I also think there's just something about showing people what good looks like. So there's nothing wrong with the first couple times a rep is in a new type of situation, like when they transition from an SDR to an AE and they're having that first follow-up email or whatever, that you actually write it for them the first time, right? And then they'll get it. Once they see it a couple times, then they see it. So you have to show them what good looks like. If you starting from, there's a difference between like starting from what they did and then editing it, and then showing them what good looks like. I think, yes, it's good to edit what they've done and give them feedback and coach what they've done. And it's the same thing for calls too. Like if you start with what good looks like and then you show them kind of the delta and then help them get there, I think it's a little easier than just critiquing and editing and coaching their calls and their emails.
Excellent. Brendon is still, we still have his voice. He's texted me. I think we're just about done. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending and for the incredible panel and for the real pearls here. I'm sure everybody got something. If you have more questions, feel free to approach either Max or myself at Amit@gong.io, and I'll connect you with the people, and I'm sure they'll be able to answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much. Max, anything that you want to...
Yeah, it was a great engagement today. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us. If you have any more questions, definitely send them our way. You can send them to marketing at Sales Hacker. You can tweet it to us. We'll make sure that Meet or the right people get them. Stay tuned. We're going to post a recording of this within the next 48 hours on saleshacker.com. But thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.